On my 70th birthday, my sister Linda looked at me from across the table and said with a smile, "Emily, tell me, are you enjoying your $500,000 trust fund?" I stared at her confused, not understanding. The words didn't fully sink in. I asked slowly, feeling something tighten in my chest. "What trust fund are you talking about?" My son Michael dropped his fork. My daughter-in-law Sarah turned pale as a ghost. They both looked like they wanted to vanish right there, swallowed by the marble floor of their own house. Then Linda turned to them, and with that firm voice she always had, she asked them straight out, "What did you do with the money?" The silence that followed wasn't a normal silence. It was heavy. It was guilty. It was the kind of silence that screams truths nobody wants to hear. That night, the house didn't smell like a party. It smelled like goodbye. The kind you sense but don't want to name. I was sitting at the head of the table like always, like I was just another decoration among the fancy plates and crystal glasses I never had in my own home. 70 years. 70 years. And my son Michael had insisted so much on celebrating my birthday at his mansion that I couldn't say no. Not because I wanted to be there, but because a mother never stops chasing her kid's affection, even if it costs her dignity. My name is Emily Thompson. I was born in a small Midwestern town where girls learned from a young age to stay quiet, to obey, to smile, even when everything inside was breaking. I got married young, had 2 kids, widowed 5 years ago, and since then, I've lived alone in a tiny apartment on the edge of the suburbs, scraping by on a pension that barely covers food. Michael lives in a 3-story house with a yard and a pool. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, wears designer clothes and trades in her car every 2 years. My grandkids go to private schools where the tuition costs more than 3 months of my rent. I always thought they worked hard for it, that they deserved it, that I had no right to ask for anything because I'd already done my part raising them. But that night when Linda said those words, something inside me broke, or maybe woke up. Linda is my younger sister. She's 65 and lives in another city. She's successful, owns her own consulting firm, travels the world, wears elegant suits and French perfumes. We see each other rarely, maybe once or twice a year. Not because we don't get along, but because our lives went in completely different directions. She built an empire. I built a family. Or so I thought. Linda showed up that night with a gift wrapped in gold paper and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. She hugged me tight, like always, told me I looked good, even though we both knew it was a lie. I was thinner, more tired, more faded. She sat next to me and started talking about her travels, her projects, life in general. Michael and Sarah smiled awkwardly from across the table. My grandkids were in their rooms, probably glued to their phones. The conversation was shallow, uncomfortable, full of long pauses nobody knew how to fill. Then Linda poured herself more wine and looked at me with that expression she always had when she was about to say something important. "Emily," she said, "I want to ask you something that's been bugging me for a while." I nodded, not imagining what was coming. "Are you enjoying your $500,000 trust fund?" she asked casually, like asking about the weather. The world stopped. My ears buzzed. $500,000 trust fund. I didn't get it. I looked at Linda like she was speaking another language. "What trust fund are you talking about?" I asked, my voice so small I barely recognized it. Linda frowned. She stared at me. "The trust fund your husband left for you before he died. You're not using it." I felt the floor shift under my feet. My husband, my late husband, a trust fund. He never told me about that. I never saw documents, never got money, nothing, absolutely nothing. "I don't know anything about that," I murmured, feeling tears sting my eyes. Linda set her glass down with a sharp thud. Her face changed. She wasn't the kind sister who came with gifts anymore. She was the no-nonsense businesswoman who doesn't tolerate lies or betrayal. She turned to Michael and Sarah, who were completely frozen like pillars of salt. "What did you do with the money?" Linda asked, her voice so cold it chilled the whole room. Michael cleared his throat. He tried to smile. "Aunt Linda, I think there's a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Linda cut him off. "I was there when your dad signed those documents. I was a witness. $500,000 in a trust fund for Emily with clear instructions that she'd get lifetime monthly payments. "Where is that money?" Sarah stood up so fast her chair almost tipped over. "I need to use the bathroom," she muttered, and she practically ran out. Michael sat there opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. His eyes avoided mine. And in that moment I knew my sister was telling the truth. I knew my son had stolen from me. I knew everything he had, everything he flaunted, everything that made me feel like a burden was built with my money. "Mom," Michael started with that little boy voice he used when he'd done something wrong. "Let me explain." But I raised my hand. I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. First, I needed to understand. I needed to process. I needed to breathe. Linda pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Daniel Carter," she said firmly. "The lawyer who helped your dad with the trust. He has all the copies, all the documents, everything." Michael paled even more. "Aunt, that's not necessary." "Oh, it is necessary," Linda replied, already dialing. I sat there staring at my untouched plate of food. Everything spun in my head. My husband had left me $500,000. $500,000. I'd been living on less than $800 a month, skipping meals, wearing old clothes, feeling like a burden to my son. And all that time, he had my money. My money. The tears started falling. I couldn't stop them. They weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of humiliation, of betrayal so deep it split my soul. Linda ended the call and put her hand on mine. "Daniel's on his way," she said softly. "We're going to sort this out. I promise." Michael was still there, frozen, his face red and forehead sweaty. Sarah hadn't come back from the bathroom. The birthday that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into a trial. And I, the guest of honor, was the only one who didn't know I'd been the victim of a crime. To understand how I got to that moment sitting at that table feeling like a fool, I need you to come back in time with me. I need you to see who I was before that night. Before I found out my own flesh and blood had stolen the life I deserved. I was always the invisible woman. The one who served the coffee but never drank it. The one who cooked for everyone but ate the leftovers. The one who listened to everyone's problems but never talked about her own. That's how I was raised. That's how I raised my kids. That's how I lived for 70 years. My husband died 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He was a hardworking man, honest, quiet like me. He worked his whole life as an accountant at a mid-sized company. We weren't rich, but we didn't go hungry. We had a modest house, an old car, a simple life. Or so I thought. When he died, I was devastated. Not just from the pain of losing him, but because I felt completely lost. He handled all the money, all the papers, all the big decisions. I just signed where he told me to sign. I never asked, I never doubted. I trusted him completely. Michael took care of everything after the funeral. He organized the papers. He talked to the lawyers. He explained to me that Dad had left some debts and that the pension I'd get was small. He said we'd sell the family home because we needed to pay those obligations. I accepted it all without question. What did I know about finances? What did I know about laws? I moved to a small apartment in a rundown neighborhood. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom that always had plumbing issues. The rent was $300 a month. My pension was $750. I budgeted every day to make it stretch. I bought the cheapest stuff at the grocery store, walked instead of taking the bus to save $1, turned off lights the second I left a room. Michael visited once a month. Maybe. Always in a rush, always with his phone in hand. He'd give me $200 and say it was all he could spare. I'd thank him like he was giving me the world. $200 that meant the difference between eating chicken or just rice that week. Sarah never came with him. She said she was busy with the kids, with work, with a million things. The few times I saw her, she looked at me with a mix of pity and disdain, like I was an old piece of furniture that didn't work anymore but couldn't be thrown out. My grandkids saw me as a stranger. When Michael invited me over for holidays, they'd barely say hi. They'd run upstairs to their rooms full of expensive toys and huge screens. I'd stay downstairs sitting in the huge living room feeling small, feeling out of place. I'd see their house and not understand how my son had achieved so much. 3 stories, marble floors, imported furniture, a kitchen straight out of a magazine. Sarah showed off her designer purses. Michael talked about his investments. I thought maybe he was smarter than his father, more ambitious, more capable. I never suspected everything he had was mine. The days in my apartment were all the same. I'd get up early even though I had nothing to do, drink watery coffee because the good stuff was too expensive, stare out the window at people rushing to their jobs, their lives, their purposes. I didn't have any anymore. I'd clean the apartment even if it was already clean. Watch soap operas I didn't care about just to hear voices that weren't mine. Cook for one and save leftovers for the next day. And the next. And the next. The neighbors were nice, but distant. Everyone worked. Everyone had busy families. I was the old lady in apartment 203, the one who said hi in the hallway, the one who never caused trouble, the one who paid her rent on time by selling some of the few jewels I had left when money ran short. I had one friend, Patricia. She lived next door. She was a widow like me, but with a better pension. Her kids called her every day, visited on weekends, paid for her trips. I envied her quietly. Patricia noticed things. She'd ask why my son never came around, why I wore the same clothes all the time, why sometimes she heard me crying at night when I thought no one could hear. One day, over tea in her apartment, she said something that stuck with me. "Emily, you've always been the type to swallow everything, to endure, to stay silent. But nobody's going to give you a prize for suffering quietly. Sometimes you have to stop swallowing. Sometimes you have to spit out what's poisoning you." I laughed nervously, told her I was fine, that I didn't need anything, that my son did what he could for me. But Patricia looked me straight in the eye and shook her head. "One day you're going to wake up, Emily, and that day, I hope it's not too late." I didn't understand her words then. Now I do. The flashbacks hit me in waves. I remember when Michael was a kid, and I cleaned houses to pay for his English lessons. I remember sleepless nights when he was sick and I didn't have money for the doctor, but I took him anyway. I remember selling my wedding ring to pay for his college. I also remember how he started getting embarrassed of me as he grew up, how he stopped introducing me to his friends, how he'd ask me not to pick him up at school because the other kids teased him about my old clothes, how at his wedding to Sarah, they sat me in the back row of the church like I was just another guest and not the groom's mother. I always told myself it was normal, that kids grow up and drift away, that I had to understand, that I couldn't be a burden. Those words. Burden. How many times did I hear them? How many times did I say them to myself? I don't want to be a burden. I can't ask for more. They've done enough for me. I'm fine alone. Lies. All lies I repeated to avoid facing the truth that my son had abandoned me emotionally long before he stole my money. The truth that I'd let people treat me like trash because I thought that was love, that was being a good mother. The weeks before my birthday were weird. Michael called more often than usual. He insisted I come to his house for the celebration, said Sarah was planning something special, that the kids wanted to see me. I agreed, excited. I thought maybe they were finally including me, that maybe they finally saw me. Patricia helped me get ready that night. She lent me a nice shawl, did my hair, told me I looked beautiful. But she also said something else, something that sounded like a warning. If something feels off tonight, don't stay quiet. You deserve more than you think. I laughed, told her to stop worrying, that I was just going to dinner with my family, that everything would be fine. But as the cab took me to Michael's house, something twisted in my stomach, a feeling I couldn't name, like my body knew something my mind didn't want to accept yet. I arrived, and the house was lit up. Soft music, smell of fancy food. Michael opened the door with a big smile. Too big. Sarah greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Too sweet. The kids came down for a quick hug before disappearing again. Too rehearsed. Everything was too much. I sat at that huge table feeling lonelier than in my empty apartment. And then Linda arrived. My sister. The one I didn't know was coming. The one Michael didn't expect. The one who held the key to unlocking the box of lies he'd built so carefully. Everything started going sideways 3 weeks before my birthday. Though at the time I didn't know it, I was still living my usual life. my small life, my life of surviving day to day on $750 a month, and the illusion that things might get better someday. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my living room watching the news when the phone rang. It was Michael. That was already odd. He didn't call on Tuesdays. He called on Sundays, if at all. And conversations always lasted less than 5 minutes. "Mom," he said with a strange voice, a voice trying to sound casual, but full of something I couldn't place. "How are you? Fine, son. Everything okay over there?" Yeah, all good. Listen, I wanted to talk about your birthday. It's coming up, right? My birthday. 70 years. I hadn't thought much about it. What for? There was nothing to celebrate. Another year of loneliness. Another year of counting coins. "Yeah, the 23rd, I replied without much enthusiasm. "Sarah and I want to do something special. A dinner at the house. Sound good?" It surprised me. They never planned anything for me. My last birthday I spent alone eating canned soup in front of the TV. "You don't have to bother," I said automatically. "I'm fine. I don't need anything." "Mom, it's no bother. We want to. The kids want to be there too. It's going to be nice." Yeah. Something in his tone bugged me. It was too insistent, too eager. But I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe my son was finally seeing me, that maybe he finally cared. "Okay," I agreed. "Thanks, son. Perfect. I'll send a car for you that day. Don't worry about a thing." He hung up quick, like always. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling a mix of excitement and distrust. Why now? Why this year? What had changed? The next days were the same as always, but I couldn't stop thinking about that dinner. I got my hopes up, let myself dream that maybe things between Michael and me could get better, that maybe he'd reflected, that maybe he remembered everything I'd done for him. A week later, Michael called again. This time his voice sounded more tense. "Mom, I need to ask you something. Have you talked to Aunt Linda lately?" The question threw me off. Linda and I talked every 2 or 3 months, short chats. She was always busy. I always had little to say. "No, not for about 2 months. Why?" "Nothing. Just curious." "Hey, about the dinner. Let's keep it intimate. Just us. Close family, okay?" "Sure, son, whatever you want." But something about that call left me uneasy. Why ask about Linda? What did she have to do with my birthday? Patricia noticed my worry. She always noticed everything. We were having tea in her apartment when I mentioned it. "He says he wants to throw a dinner for my birthday," I told her. "But I don't know. He sounds weird. Nervous." Patricia set her cup down and looked at me seriously. "Emily, do you trust your son?" The question hurt. "He's my son. Of course I trust him." "Even though he never visits, even though he has you living on less than what he tips waiters, even though he lives in a mansion while you count pennies for bread?" "He does what he can for me," I defended. I always defended him. It was my job. It's what mothers do. "And if he's not doing anything for you, and if he's doing everything against you—" "Don't say that," I begged, feeling tears threaten. "Michael's not like that." Patricia sighed. She took my hand. "Emily, listen to me. You're a good woman. Too good. And good people always end up getting stepped on by those without scruples. I'm not saying your son is bad. I'm just saying open your eyes. Don't swallow everything they feed you without chewing first." Her words stuck in my head for days. I tried to ignore them, tried to convince myself she was wrong, that she was bitter, that she was projecting her own issues onto my life. But at night, when I couldn't sleep, I wondered things. Why did Michael live so well when I'd been left with nothing? Why had my husband left me only that miserable pension after working 40 years? Why had Michael handled all the papers without letting me see anything? One afternoon I decided to look. I didn't know what exactly I was looking for. But I needed to find something, anything. I pulled out the box of documents from the closet, old papers, paid bills, photos, memories. At the bottom was a folder with some funeral documents for my husband, receipts, certificates, a letter from the lawyer who handled everything. The letter was addressed to Michael. It said something about finalizing the estate matters, but nothing specific, nothing I could understand. There was a name, Daniel Carter, lawyer, with a phone number. I held that paper for a long time. Should I call? What would I say? What right did I have to poke into things Michael had already settled? But Patricia's words echoed. Open your eyes. Don't swallow everything. I tucked the paper into my purse. I didn't call that day, or the next, but I carried it with me like a bomb I didn't dare set off. The Friday before my birthday, Michael showed up at my apartment unannounced. That never happened. He never came without warning. He knocked and I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Son, what a surprise," I said, opening the door. He walked in looking around like it was his first time, like he'd never seen the poverty I lived in, like he was just noticing how miserable my life was. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said without sitting. "Did something happen? Are you okay?" Yeah. Just wanted to confirm you're coming to dinner on Tuesday. It's important you're there." "Of course I'll be there. You already told me." He ran his hand through his hair. He was sweating, even though the apartment was cool. "And you haven't talked to anyone? No one's called you asking about Dad about money stuff?" My heart started beating faster. "No. Who would call me?" "No one. Just asking. Sometimes scammers call widows saying there's inheritances or whatever. If anyone calls, ignore them. And tell me right away." "Okay, son." He gave me a quick kiss on the forehead and left as fast as he came. I stood in the middle of the living room feeling like something very bad was about to happen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed in bed thinking about everything. The weird calls, the unexpected visit, the warnings about scammers, the insistence on the dinner. The next day, I pulled out the paper with the lawyer's number. I stared at it for hours. Finally, with shaking hands, I dialed. A secretary answered. "Carter Law Firm. Good afternoon." "Good afternoon. I'd like to speak with Mr. Daniel Carter." "Who's calling?" "Emily Thompson. I'm the widow of David Thompson. He handled some matters for my husband 5 years ago." There was a pause. "One moment, please." The wait felt eternal. I almost hung up 3 times, but something stopped me. Finally, a man's voice. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Daniel Carter. What a surprise to hear from you after all this time." "Sorry to bother you." I started with a shaky voice. "I just wanted to ask about my husband's papers. You helped with everything after his death." "Yes, that's right. I worked with your son Michael on all the proceedings. And there was something about a trust fund." The silence on the other end was dead quiet. So long I thought the call dropped. "Mrs. Thompson," he said finally with a very serious voice, "I think you and I need to talk, urgently." The day of my birthday dawned gray, like the sky knew what I still didn't want to accept. I got up early, even though the dinner was at night. I couldn't sleep thinking about the conversation with the lawyer Daniel Carter. After that call, he'd asked to meet. He said there were things I needed to know, things that should have been told to me 5 years ago. But I asked him to wait. I said I had a family dinner and we could talk after. I don't know why I did that. Maybe because part of me still wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, that my son hadn't betrayed me. Patricia knocked on my door mid-morning. She brought a small cake with 1 candle. "So you don't spend your birthday without blowing out at least one," she said with a sad smile. We sat in my living room eating cake with watery coffee. She looked at me like she wanted to say something but held back. "What's wrong?" I asked. "You're acting weird, weirder than usual. Did something happen?" I told her about the call to the lawyer, about his mysterious words, about the feeling that something terrible was about to come out. Patricia set her plate aside. "Emily, listen good. Wherever you go tonight, don't stay quiet. If something doesn't sit right, speak up. If someone disrespects you, get up and leave. You don't owe anyone anything, least of all those who've made you feel small your whole life." "He's my son," I whispered. "And you're his mother, the one who broke her back for him, the one who sold her wedding ring to give him a future. Don't forget that when he tries to make you feel like you should thank him." Her words hit deep. She hugged me tight before leaving. "Call me when you get home. I don't care what time." I was left alone watching the clock. The hours dragged like torture. I showered, put on the only half-decent dress I had, a brown one that was faded but at least no holes. I did my hair in front of the mirror and saw myself old, tired, worn out. 70 years, a whole life. And for what? To be alone in a miserable apartment waiting for my son to toss me scraps of attention once a year. Michael sent a cab to pick me up at 7. The driver was nice. He asked if I was going to a celebration. I said yes, it was my birthday. He congratulated me. I thanked him. I didn't tell him I felt like I was going to my own funeral. When the cab stopped in front of Michael's house, my stomach twisted. The house was lit up. 3 stories of luxury I never understood how my son could afford. Perfect gardens. Fancy cars in the driveway. All so different from the apartment where I counted pennies for rice. I rang the bell. Sarah opened the door. She wore a dress that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect. "Emily, glad you made it. Happy birthday." She gave me 2 air kisses. Didn't even touch my face. I walked in and the smell of fancy food hit me. Shrimp, wine, fresh-baked bread, everything I couldn't afford. She led me to the living room. Michael was there with the kids. He stood to greet me. "Mom, happy birthday." He hugged me. But it was an empty hug, the kind you give out of duty. The grandkids greeted me from the couch without getting up, said a mechanical, "Hi, Grandma," and went back to their phones. I sat in a chair feeling like I didn't belong at my own party. Sarah brought wine glasses. "Want one, Emily?" "No thanks, water's fine." "Sure, it's a really good Italian wine." "Sure." Michael was nervous. I could tell. He fidgeted. Checked his phone every 2 minutes. Talked, but his words sounded hollow, like rehearsed. 30 minutes of forced conversation passed. Superficial questions about my health, comments about the weather, nothing real, nothing deep. I just wanted the dinner to end fast so I could leave. And then the doorbell rang. Michael went pale. Sarah dropped her glass but caught it before it broke. They looked at each other with an expression I couldn't read. Fear, panic, something like that. "Expecting someone else?" I asked. "No," Michael said quick. Too quick. "Must be a mistake." But the bell rang again, more insistent this time. Sarah went to open it. I heard voices in the entryway. A woman's voice I recognized right away, even though I hadn't heard it in months. Linda, my sister. She walked into the living room like a storm. Elegant as always, gray pantsuit, high heels, expensive perfume, perfect hair. She carried a big gift wrapped in gold paper and a bottle of wine. "Emily," she yelled excitedly when she saw me. She ran to hug me. A real hug, the kind that squeezes tight. "Happy birthday, sister. 70 years. I can't believe it." I was in shock. "Linda, I didn't know you were coming." "I wanted to surprise you." She looked at me closely. "Michael told me they were celebrating your birthday, and I couldn't miss it. 70 isn't every day." I looked at Michael. He hadn't told her. That was obvious from his face. Linda had come on her own, and he didn't expect her. He didn't want her there. "Aunt Linda, what a surprise," Michael said with a tense voice. "We didn't know you were coming." "That's why it's a surprise nephew." Linda sat next to me and took my hand. "How are you?" "Emily, you look thinner." "I'm fine," I lied. "Sure, eating okay, does what you have cover it?" The questions made me uncomfortable, not because they were rude, but because they were real, because they hit the truth I always hid. Yeah, all good." Linda looked at me like she didn't believe it, but she didn't push. Instead, she turned to Michael and Sarah. "What a beautiful house you have. It surprises me more every time I come. How's business, Michael?" "Good. Everything's good." "Glad to hear it, because I know it's not easy keeping up this lifestyle. The kids' private schools, the cars, this house, it all costs. But I guess with the investments you've made, it's going well." Michael cleared his throat. "I've been lucky." "Luck helps, but so does starting capital, right?" The air got tense. I didn't understand why, but something in Linda's tone was different, like she was playing a game only she knew the rules to. Sarah came from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready." We moved to the huge dining room. We all shifted to the massive dining room. A wooden table that could seat 12, fine china, silver flatware, cloth napkins, all so elegant, all so far from my reality. They sat me at the head, as the guest of honor. Linda sat to my right, Michael and Sarah across, the kids at the ends quiet and bored. The food was exquisite. Salad with ingredients I didn't know, baked salmon, potatoes with herbs, expensive wine everyone drank but me, polite conversation that said nothing. And then Linda set her fork down, took a long sip of wine, looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, and said the words that changed everything. "Emily, I want to ask you something that's been bugging me for a while. Are you enjoying your $500,000 trust fund?" The world stopped. The dining room noise vanished. I only heard my heart pounding in my ears. $500,000. Trust fund. The words made no sense. "What trust fund are you talking about?" I asked with a shaky voice. Linda frowned. "The trust fund your husband David left for you before he died. I was there when he signed the documents. $500,000, so you'd have a decent retirement, so you'd never want for anything." The tears started stinging my eyes. "I don't know anything about that." Linda set her glass down with a sharp thud. Her face changed completely. She wasn't the sweet sister anymore. She was the tough businesswoman. She turned to Michael and Sarah. "What did you do with the money?" The silence after that question was so heavy I could feel it crushing my chest. Michael and Sarah had gone completely still, like pillars of salt, like time itself froze just for them. My grandkids looked confused from one adult to another without understanding what was happening. I didn't fully understand either, but something inside me already knew the truth. I'd known since the call with the lawyer. I'd known since Michael's weird visits. Maybe I'd known for 5 years but refused to see it. "Aunt Linda," Michael started with a trembling voice, "I think there's a misunderstanding here." "There's no misunderstanding." Linda cut him off with a coldness I'd never heard from her. "I was there, in Daniel Carter's office. Your dad asked me to witness when he signed those documents, $500,000 in an irrevocable trust for Emily, with guaranteed lifetime monthly payments, $4,000 a month, all legally protected so she'd never worry about money. $4,000 a month. I'd been living on $750. The words didn't fit in my head. They couldn't be real. "Mom," Michael said, finally looking at me, "let me explain." But Linda raised her hand. "No. First answer my question. Where is that money? Why does your mother live in a miserable apartment with a pension that doesn't even cover decent food? Why does she know nothing about the trust?" Sarah stood up so fast her chair almost fell. "I need to use the bathroom," she muttered, and she basically ran out of the dining room. The kids stood up too. "Can we go to our rooms?" the older one asked. "Go," Michael said without looking at them. It was just us 3 left. Linda furious, Michael terrified, and me in the middle feeling my world crumble piece by piece. "Michael," I said with a voice I didn't recognize as mine, "is what your aunt says true?" He ran his hands over his face. He was sweating. His hands shook. "Mom, it's complicated." "It's not complicated," Linda jumped in. "It's simple. Yes or no. Did you know about the trust?" Silence. "Did you know?" my sister insisted. "Yes," Michael whispered finally. "I knew." The words hit like stones, like punches, like physical betrayal that knocked the air out of me. "And why didn't I know?" I asked, feeling tears fall uncontrollably. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad named me the trustee. He put me in charge of handling everything. I thought it was better to use it for investments, to grow the money, to secure the family's future." "What family's future?" Linda asked with contempt. "Your future. Because your mother's future clearly didn't matter to you. She's the beneficiary, not you. That money was for her." "I was going to give it to her," Michael defended weakly, "when the time was right." "When?" I yelled. I couldn't hold back. 70 years of holding everything in quietly, and finally something inside me snapped. "When was the right time, Michael? When I starved to death? When I couldn't pay rent? When—" "Mom, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" My voice shook with rage and pain. Tell me what it's like that for 5 years I've lived on less than $800 a month while you had my money. Tell me what it's like that I've sold my things to eat while you bought luxury cars. Tell me what it's like that I felt like a burden to you when all this time you were living off what was mine." Linda pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Daniel Carter right now. He has all the documents, all the proof, and we're clearing this up once and for all." "Aunt, wait," Michael begged. "It's not necessary." "Oh, it is." Linda was already dialing. "Very necessary." And Michael looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mom, please, we can fix this as a family. We don't need lawyers." "Fix it how?" I asked. "By giving me scraps when it suits you, by keeping on lying to me." Sarah came back to the dining room. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. She stood by the door like she was ready to bolt any second. Linda had the phone to her ear. "Daniel, it's Linda Hayes. I'm here with my sister Emily. We need you to come urgently. Now. Yes, it's about David Thompson's trust. Pause. Excellent. We're waiting." She hung up and looked at all of us. "He's on his way, bringing all the documents. We're settling this tonight." "You can't do this," Sarah said in a shrill voice. "This is our house." "And that's my sister's money," Linda replied coldly. "The money you stole." "We didn't steal anything," Michael protested. "I was the legal trustee. I had the right to make decisions." "You had the right to manage the money for your mother's benefit, not yours." Linda stepped closer to him. "You know what this is called: embezzlement, fraud, theft, and it can put you in jail." Michael paled even more. "I didn't mean to hurt Mom. I just thought I could make better use of the money, invest it, multiply it." "And did you multiply it?" Linda asked. "Where are the original $500,000 plus 5 years of investment gains? Because from what I see, they're in this house, in those cars, in that fancy clothes your wife wears, all built with your mother's money while she went hungry." I sat there listening to it all like it was a movie, like it wasn't my life, like it wasn't my son they were talking about, my son who stole from me, who lied to me, who let me suffer while he lived like a king with my money. "Michael," I said finally with a calm voice. Too calm. The calm after the storm. "Look me in the eyes." He lifted his gaze slowly. "Did you ever feel guilty? Even once in these 5 years, did you think about me living alone in that horrible apartment while you slept in your fancy sheets bought with my money?" "Mom, I..." "Answer, yes or no." Silence. That silence told me everything I needed to know. "And you?" I turned to Sarah. "You knew." She nodded almost imperceptibly. Coward to the end. She couldn't even admit it out loud. "You too," I said, standing up from the chair. "You saw me struggle. You saw me count coins. You saw me wear the same worn-out clothes over and over. You saw me turn down invitations because I couldn't afford the bus. And you said nothing, did nothing, kept taking my money and let me believe I was a burden to you." The tears fell, but my voice didn't shake. Something had changed inside me. Something broke, but something also got stronger. "The worst part," I continued, "isn't that you stole the money. The worst is that you stole my dignity. You made me feel worthless, stupid, an old woman good for nothing. You made me believe I should thank you for the scraps you gave, and all the time you knew the truth." Michael tried to approach, but I raised my hand. "Don't touch me. Mom, forgive me. I can pay you back everything. I swear I..." "With what?" Linda asked. "Because if you spent it all on this luxury life, where are you getting $500,000 plus 5 years of monthly payments you never gave her? We're talking over $700,000. The number made me dizzy. $700,000. A lifetime of security they'd taken from me. The doorbell rang. Linda went to open it. She came back with a man in his 60s, dark suit, leather briefcase, serious expression. "Good evening," the man said. "I'm Daniel Carter. Sorry we meet under these circumstances, Mrs. Thompson." I stood up. My legs shook. "You spoke to me on the phone." "That's right." And I'm deeply sorry I didn't insist on talking to you directly 5 years ago. I assumed your son had informed you of everything. That was my mistake." He opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. He put it on the dining table. "Here's everything. The will, the trust deed, the administration documents, all signed by your husband and by Michael as trustee." He opened the folder and started showing me papers. My vision was blurry from tears, but I could see the figures. $500,000. Monthly payments of $4,000. My name on every document as the sole beneficiary. "Your husband was very clear," Daniel explained. "This money was only for you. Michael had authority to administer it, but with the legal obligation to deliver the monthly payments without fail. Any diversion of those funds for personal use is a crime." Michael slumped into a chair. Sarah cried quietly. I stood there looking at those papers that represented the deepest betrayal I'd ever known. Daniel Carter spread the documents on the table like cards in a grim game. Each paper was more proof of the lie I'd lived for 5 years. I looked at them without fully processing. My brain refused to accept this was real. "Mrs. Thompson," the lawyer said with a firm but not cruel voice, "have you received any monthly payments from this trust in the last 5 years?" "No," I replied in a thread of a voice. "I didn't know it existed." "Were you ever explained the terms of your husband's will?" "Michael told me there were some debts, that we had to sell the family home to pay them, that only a small pension was left for me." Daniel shook his head. "There were no debts. The home was sold, but the proceeds plus your husband's savings and life insurance added up to the $500,000 that make up the trust. It was all meant for you." I sat down before I fell. My legs wouldn't hold me. The house, too. "That, too. Your husband left clear instructions to sell the property and add that value to the trust to maximize your monthly income. You should have been living on $4,000 a month, comfortably, without worries. $4,000 monthly for 5 years. I did the quick math in my head. $240,000 I'd never seen. $240,000 my son had used while I counted pennies for bread. "Michael," Daniel said, turning to my son, "where is the money?" My son had his head in his hands. "I invested it." "In what?" "In this house, in the business, in the kids' schools, in everything." "Do you have records of those investments? Account statements, documents, showing that money was invested to benefit your mother?" Silence. "Let me ask another way," the lawyer continued. "Can you repay the original $500,000 plus the monthly payments you owed your mother?" More silence. Sarah sobbed louder now. "He can't," Linda said with contempt. "He spent it all, on luxuries, on appearances, on living a life that wasn't his." Daniel pulled out more papers. "Here are the trust's bank statements. In the first year after your husband's death, Michael transferred $50,000 for the down payment on this house. Another $100,000 went to renovations, $30,000 on a car, and so on. In 2 years, he'd nearly emptied the principal fund." "And the other 3 years?" Linda asked. "Loans against the trust, more transfers, small amounts here and there that add up big. By the time we noticed, almost nothing was left." "We noticed," I repeated. "You knew all this." Daniel looked down. For the first time, the lawyer seemed ashamed. "I knew Michael was making moves. He was the legal trustee, so technically he had authorization. But I assumed you knew, that he consulted you, that there was a family agreement. I never imagined you knew nothing." "Why didn't you contact me to confirm?" My voice came out harder than I meant. "I should have. It's my professional responsibility. And I offer my sincerest apologies. But I must also tell you that Michael assured me several times you were well taken care of, that you lived with them, that you didn't need the monthly money because he covered all your expenses." I looked at Michael with a mix of horror and disgust. "You told him I lived with you." Michael didn't answer. He couldn't even look at me. "You told him that!" I yelled. I didn't care about holding back anymore. "You lied to the lawyer saying you took care of me while I lived alone eating canned soup." "Mom, I thought eventually I'd bring you to live with us." when in 10 more years, never. That was just another lie you told yourself to sleep at night. Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was shrill and pathetic. We wanted to help you, Emily, but we had expenses. The kids need so many things. The house is expensive to keep up. It wasn't out of meanness. Linda laughed. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It was full of contempt. Not out of meanness. Then what was it? Ignorance, greed, you justify stealing from an old woman because your kids need private tennis lessons. We didn't steal, Sarah insisted weakly. Yes, you did, Daniel said firmly. Legally, that's exactly what you did. Embezzlement of trust funds, fraud, financial abuse of an elder. Those are all criminal offenses plus civil ones. Fear settled on Michael's face. Criminal. But I'm her son. She won't press charges. Everyone looked at me. I stayed quiet. I didn't know what I felt. Too many emotions at once. Pain, rage, betrayal. But also something new. Something I hadn't felt in years. Power. The feeling that finally I had control. What's left of the trust? Linda asked Daniel. The lawyer checked his papers. About $30,000. That's all that wasn't squandered. $30,000 from $500,000. My husband had worked his whole life to secure my future, and his own son destroyed it in less than 5 years. And what options does my sister have? Linda continued. Daniel adjusted his glasses. Several. She can file a civil lawsuit to recover the funds plus damages. She can file criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement, or she can try a private settlement with her son for repayment. Which do you recommend? Linda asked. It depends on what Mrs. Thompson wants to achieve. If she wants her money back quickly, a private settlement might be faster. If she wants justice and real consequences, the legal route is better, though longer. I stood from the chair, walked to the window. Outside, everything looked normal. The perfectly manicured yard, streetlights lighting the upscale neighborhood. None of it was real. It was all an illusion built on my money and my suffering. Mom, Michael said behind me, please talk to me. Tell me what you want me to do. I turned slowly, looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that once looked at me with a child's love. Those eyes that now only showed fear and guilt. What I want you to do, I repeated his words. I want you to tell me the truth. For the first time in 5 years. Did you plan this from the start? From when Dad died, did you already know you'd keep my money? No, it wasn't like that. At first, I just took a little for the house down payment. I thought I'd pay it back. But then we needed more, and it got out of hand. And you never thought to tell me the truth, to give me at least some of what was mine. He looked down. I was afraid you'd get mad, that you'd judge me. And you preferred to let me live in misery, preferred to watch me suffer rather than face your mistake. I thought you were okay, that you didn't need that much, that you were happy with your simple life. Those words pierced like knives. Happy. You think I was happy going hungry? Happy wearing clothes with holes? Happy feeling like a burden to you every time I asked for $200 lousy dollars? Mom. Don't call me Mom. A mother to you was someone to use and discard, someone whose sacrifice meant nothing, someone you could lie to and steal from without remorse. Sarah approached timidly. Emily, please think about the kids. If this goes public, if there's a trial, they'll suffer. They'll lose their father. I looked at her in disbelief. You're asking me to think about your kids, you who never thought about me. What will you tell them when they ask why their dad is in trouble, that he stole from his grandma and she had the nerve to fight back? Linda stood by my side. You don't have to decide anything now. Emily, take your time. Think carefully about what you want. Daniel closed his briefcase. Mrs. Thompson, I'll prepare a full report for you. Bank movements, transfers, all documented. Then you decide what to do with that information. How much time do I have to decide? I asked. Legally, you have several years to file a suit, but I'd recommend acting soon. The longer you wait, the harder to recover assets. I nodded. My head spun. I needed to get out of there. I needed air. I needed to be alone to process all this. I'm leaving, I announced. I'll drive you, Linda said right away. Michael stepped forward. Mom, wait. Don't leave like this. We can talk more. We can. There's nothing more to talk about tonight, I interrupted. You did what you did. Now I'll do what I have to. I walked to the door. Linda followed. Daniel gathered his papers and came with us. Before leaving, I turned one last time. Michael stood in the middle of his fancy living room in his luxurious house, surrounded by everything he bought with my money. He looked small, scared, but I didn't feel sorry for him anymore. "Happy birthday to me," I said, and walked out. The silence in Linda's car was almost deafening. She drove focused eyes on the road. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. City lights passed in a blur, or maybe it was because I couldn't stop crying. They weren't loud tears. I didn't sob. I just let them fall while my head tried to process everything that just happened. My 70th birthday had been the worst and most eye-opening of my life, the day I learned I'd been my own son's victim for 5 years. "Want me to take you to your apartment?" Linda asked softly. "Yes," I whispered. We drove in silence another 15 minutes. When we got to my building, Linda turned off the engine. "Want me to come up with you?" "No, I need to be alone." "Emily, you shouldn't be alone tonight. You just took a huge hit. I've been alone for 5 years. One more night won't change anything." Linda sighed. "At least promise you'll call if you need anything. Any time. Doesn't matter." I nodded. I got out and walked to the entrance. My legs felt heavy, like I carried the whole world. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step was an effort. When I finally reached my door, my hands shook so much it was hard to get the key in. I entered the apartment and saw it with new eyes. This miserable place, this tiny room, this kitchen where one person barely fit, this bathroom with broken pipes. This had been my life while my son lived like royalty. I sat on the old second-hand couch and finally let it all out. I cried like I hadn't since my husband's funeral. I cried for the 5 lost years, for the hungry nights, for the shame of not affording a decent Christmas gift for my grandkids, for every time I felt useless and old and like a burden. But I also cried from rage, a rage I'd bottled up for 70 years, rage at a world that taught me to stay quiet, at a life that taught me to endure, at myself for accepting everything without ever questioning. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. Eventually, I heard a knock. It was Patricia. "I saw you get home," she said when I opened. She had 2 steaming mugs. "I made you tea." And I won't take no for an answer. I let her in. We sat together on the couch. She didn't ask anything, just waited. And I, after a sip of tea, told her everything. Every word, every revelation, every betrayal. Patricia listened quietly. When I finished, she set her mug down and took my hands. "Emily, do you know what just happened tonight? I found out my son stole from me." "No, well, yes. But something more important happened too. You stopped swallowing. You stopped staying silent. For the first time in your life, you demanded answers, demanded truth. And that, my friend, is the start of everything." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "I feel destroyed. Being destroyed and being weak aren't the same. Sometimes you have to fall apart completely to rebuild yourself the right way, without the lies. Without the weight of other people's expectations." Her words rang true in me. She was right. Something had changed that night. I hadn't just discovered the truth. I'd discovered my voice. The voice I'd silenced for 70 years because I was taught good women don't complain, that good mothers forgive everything, that good wives obey. "What are you going to do?" Patricia asked. "I don't know yet. The lawyer's sending all the documents. I have options, but I don't know which to pick. Which one scares you the most?" The question caught me off guard. Scared. Yes, sometimes what scares us most is what we need to do most. I thought about it. What scared me most? Suing Michael, pressing criminal charges, destroying the perfect image he'd built. No. What scared me most was something else. "I'm scared of being free," I said quietly. "Scared of having money, scared of not needing him, because then I have no excuse to keep being invisible, to keep being small, to keep accepting scraps. Patricia smiled sadly. That's exactly what you need to face then. She stayed with me late. When she finally left, I stayed awake in the dark thinking, remembering, processing. I remembered the girl I was, the one who dreamed of being a teacher. But my parents said girls don't need that much education, that it was better to marry young and start a family. I remembered the young woman who wanted to work, but my husband said wives stay home, that my job was to care for the kids and keep the house clean. I remembered the mother who wanted to do things for herself, but my kids told me to rest, that I'd done enough, that they'd handle everything. My whole life had been a series of voices telling me what to do, what to think, what to feel. And I'd obeyed because I thought that was love. I thought sacrificing was right. I thought fading away was noble. But that night I'd learned something. Sacrifice without reciprocity isn't love, it's self-destruction. And I'd been destroying myself for 70 years thinking I was being virtuous. The next days were strange. Daniel Carter sent all the documentation like he promised. Thick folders full of papers showing every dollar Michael took, every transfer, every lie documented in bank statements. Linda visited every day. She helped me go through the documents, explained legal terms I didn't get, reminded me over and over that I hadn't done anything wrong, that the guilt was all Michael's. Michael called, many times, left messages, pleading messages, messages where he promised to pay back everything, messages where he cried and begged forgiveness. I didn't answer any. I wasn't ready. Sarah called too. Her messages were different. They were justifications, attempts to make me feel guilty. Think about the family. Don't be selfish. The kids need you, like I owed them anything after what they did to me. Patricia came over in the afternoons. We'd drink tea, talk about everything and nothing. She'd share stories from her own life, how her kids had disappointed her at times too, how she'd learned to set boundaries, to say no, to choose herself without guilt. You know the difference between us and our daughter's generation, she asked one day. They learned they could have it all. We learned we deserved nothing, and both lessons are wrong. A week after my birthday, Linda came with a proposal. I've been talking to Daniel, she said, sitting on my couch, and I think we have a strategy. What kind of strategy? One that gets you your money back, but also your dignity. One that makes Michael face consequences, but without completely destroying the kids who are innocent in all this. I listened as Linda explained the plan. It was smart. It was fair. But it was also ruthless. It required me to be firm, to not back down, to not let guilt or motherly love make me waver. Can I do it? I asked out loud, though the question was more for me. You can, Linda affirmed. But only if you really want to. No one will judge you if you decide to forgive and forget. It's your choice. What would you do? My sister looked me straight in the eye. I know what I'd do, but I'm not you. I didn't spend 5 years in this apartment. I didn't have to sell my things to eat. I didn't have to endure my own son making me feel like trash while living off my money. This decision is yours alone. That night I didn't sleep. I paced the small apartment thinking, weighing options, imagining futures. Finally, as the sun started rising, I knew what I was going to do. And for the first time in 5 years, maybe in 70 years, I felt sure of a decision. Not because someone told me it was right, but because I knew it was. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looked at the woman staring back. She was 70, deep wrinkles, completely white hair. Hands worked from years of cleaning and cooking and serving others. But I also saw something new in her eyes. Something that hadn't been there before. Determination. Strength. The kind of strength that doesn't come from yelling or fighting. The kind of strength that comes from knowing your worth and not letting anyone take it away anymore. I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard, I told my reflection. I just needed to stop lowering it. I picked up the phone, dialed Daniel Carter's number. When he answered, I said the words that would change everything. I want you to prepare the documents. We're doing this. We're recovering what's mine, and we're doing it the right way, with justice, with dignity, but without mercy. 3 days later, Michael and Sarah sat across from me in Daniel Carter's office. The lawyer had set up this meeting as part of the strategy. a last chance to settle everything without going to court, a chance I was going to control completely. Michael looked terrible. Sunken eyes, unshaven beard, wrinkled clothes. Sarah sat rigid in her chair, arms crossed, with a victim expression that made me sick. Linda sat next to me, Daniel at his desk with a stack of documents in front. I was in the center, calm, firm, ready. "Thank you for coming," Daniel started. "We're here to reach an agreement that avoids a long and costly legal process for both sides." "Mom," Michael interrupted right away. "I just want to tell you I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I screwed up. I know there's no forgiveness for what I did. But I swear I'll pay you back everything." I raised my hand. "Don't talk yet. First, you're going to listen." He shut up. He looked like a scolded child, but I didn't feel pity for him anymore. For 5 years, I started with a steady but firm voice. You stole from me, lied to me, left me living in poverty while you spent my money on luxuries. You made me feel like a burden, like I should thank you for the scraps you gave. All that time you knew the truth, and you said nothing. Mom. "I'm not done yet." I cut him off. "You had 1,000 chances to tell me the truth, 1,000 chances to do the right thing, and every time you chose the lie. You chose your comfort over my well-being. So now the rules have changed. Now I choose." Daniel put the documents on the table. "These are the options. Option 1. We file a civil suit for embezzlement of trust funds. We seek full repayment plus damages. That includes accrued interest and compensation for emotional suffering. We're talking about roughly $800,000. Michael paled. "I don't have $800,000. "Then you'd sell this house," Linda said coldly. "Sell the cars, liquidate everything, and if it's not enough, you'd work the rest of your life paying the debt." "Option 2, Daniel continued. "Criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. Crimes that can land you in prison for 5 to 10 years. Sarah sobbed. "You can't do that. The kids need their father." "The kids need to learn actions have consequences," I replied. "That stealing is wrong even from family, especially from family." "Option 3, Daniel said. "We reach a private settlement. You repay the money on terms your mother sets. You sign legal documents acknowledging the debt, and if you default, we automatically proceed with options 1 and 2. "What would the terms be?" Michael asked with a broken voice. I looked at Daniel. He nodded. It was my turn to speak. "You're going to sell the house," I said. "Immediately. That house was bought with my money. It doesn't belong to you anymore." "Where will we live?" Sarah asked hysterically. "Wherever you can afford with your own money, like I had to for 5 years." "You're going to liquidate the investment accounts," I continued. "Sell the luxury car, transfer all that money to a new account in my name that Daniel will manage." "All that won't cover it," Michael said. "The house has a mortgage. I have debts." "Then you'll work to pay them." "You're going to pay me $1,000 monthly for the next 20 years if necessary, legally signed, with interest, and if you're late on one payment, I proceed with the suit and criminal charges." $1,000 monthly is a lot, Sarah protested. "We have expenses. The kids." "The kids can go to public schools," Linda interrupted. "Like millions of kids in this country. They won't die without private tennis lessons. Plus," I added, "I want something else. I want you to tell your kids the truth. Explain exactly what you did. Teach them that stealing is wrong even from family, especially from family." Michael had tears streaming down his face. "Mom, you're going to destroy my family." "No," I said firmly. "You destroyed your family when you chose to steal from me. I'm just claiming what's mine. And if your family doesn't survive that, it's because it was built on lies from the start." Daniel pushed the documents toward Michael. "You have 2 choices. Sign this agreement now, or we see you in court next week. You decide." Michael looked at the papers, looked at Sarah, looked at Linda, finally looked at me, searching for compassion, searching for me to give in, searching for the mother who always forgave everything. But that mother didn't exist anymore. "Sign," I said, "or face the full consequences of your actions." With shaking hands, Michael took the pen, read the documents, each page a reminder of his betrayal, each clause a debt he'd have to pay. He signed, Sarah had to sign too, as joint debtor, both committed to repaying everything, to selling everything, to paying me monthly, and to facing severe legal consequences if they failed. When they finished, Daniel collected the documents. These are legally binding. You have 30 days to sell the property and transfer the initial funds. Monthly payments start next month. Michael sat there still, broken. But I didn't feel victory, just a deep tiredness. The tiredness of 70 years carrying other people's expectations. "Anything else you want to say?" I asked him. "Will you ever forgive me?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Maybe, maybe not, but that doesn't depend on you anymore. You did what you did. Now I'm going to live my life, with or without your regret." I stood up. Linda came with me. We left that office, leaving behind a son who'd learned the hardest lesson of his life. The lesson that mothers have limits too. That love doesn't mean allowing abuse. That forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or letting it happen again. Outside the sun shone. It was a beautiful day. And for the first time in 5 years, I could see the beauty without it being tainted by money worries. "How do you feel?" Linda asked. "Free," I replied. Finally free. 6 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment drinking coffee. Not watery instant stuff, real coffee, from freshly ground beans. The kind I'd always seen in stores but never allowed myself to buy. The apartment wasn't big, but it was mine. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, working bathroom, and this small balcony where I could watch the sunrise every morning. I'd rented it with the money from selling Michael's house. Daniel had handled everything perfectly. The house sold in 3 weeks. After paying the mortgage and debts, $200,000 were left that went straight to my account. The cars sold, accounts liquidated. In total, I'd recovered nearly $300,000. Not the original $500,000, but enough. More than enough for a 70-year-old woman who just needed peace and dignity. Daniel had reinvested the money in a new trust. This time, I was the sole administrator. No one else had access. No one else could make decisions about my future. The monthly payments of $2,500 hit my account on time every month. And Michael paid his additional $1,000, for now. Linda visited often. Sometimes we'd go to nice restaurants for lunch. Other times, we'd just walk in the park, talking about life. She'd helped me open my eyes, to find my voice, to understand that being strong doesn't mean yelling. It means knowing your worth and not letting anyone take it. Patricia was still my neighbor. Well, not in the same building anymore, but we saw each other almost every day. We'd drink tea, share stories. She'd taught me that true friendship doesn't need shared blood, just mutual respect and honesty. Michael. We didn't talk much. He called once a month, short, awkward conversations. He'd tell me they'd rented a smaller apartment, that Sarah had to find a job, that the kids were adjusting to public school. He'd ask how I was. I'd answer in one-word responses. I hadn't forgiven. I wasn't sure if I ever would. But there was something more important than forgiveness. I'd found peace. Peace with what happened, peace with my choices, peace with myself. The grandkids texted sometimes, short messages, confused. Michael had told them a softened version of the truth. He'd said he'd made a mistake with Grandma's money, that he was trying to fix it. The kids didn't fully get it. But that was okay. Someday they would. I'd started doing things I'd never allowed myself. Took painting classes. Turned out I had talent for landscapes. Nothing professional. But I liked it. It made me happy. And that was enough. I joined a book club at the neighborhood library. Women my age who met once a week to talk about books. Some had stories like mine, kids who'd disappointed them, families who'd used them. We were all learning to live for ourselves after 70 years living for others. One afternoon, while painting on my balcony, the phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but something told me to. "Mrs. Thompson." It was a young woman's voice. "Yes, that's me." "My name is Emily. I'm a social worker at the community center. One of the women in your book club shared your story with our coordinator, and we were wondering if you'd be interested in speaking to other older women going through family financial abuse." I stayed quiet, processing the offer. "You don't have to decide now." Emily continued, "but we think your experience could help other women to find their voice, to understand they're not alone." "Let me think about it," I replied. That night, I couldn't sleep thinking about that call, me helping others, me sharing my story. For 70 years, I'd been invisible, silent. Now I'd speak publicly. I told Linda the next day. She smiled. "Remember what I told you months ago, that sometimes you have to fall apart to rebuild right. You fell apart, you rebuilt, and now you can help others do the same." "I'm scared," I admitted. "Fear is good. It means it matters. It means it's real." A week later, I was sitting in a circle of 10 women at the community center, all over 60, all with stories of families using them, stealing from them, making them feel invisible. I told them my story. No sugarcoating, no softening, the full truth, the trust, the betrayal, the poverty, and also the recovery, the justice, the peace. When I finished, there were tears in every eye, but also something else: hope, recognition, the understanding that they weren't crazy, that they weren't alone, that there was a way forward. One woman raised her hand shyly. "How did you find the courage to confront them?" "I didn't find it," I answered honestly. "I built it, day by day, decision by decision, by stopping swallowing what poisoned me, learning that my voice mattered, that my life mattered, that I mattered." Now it's been almost a year since that birthday night, since the revelation that changed everything. I still live in my apartment with the balcony. I still paint. I still read. I still drink real coffee every morning. But I do something else too. Twice a month I meet with that group of women. I help them understand their rights. I go with them to talk to lawyers. I hold them when they're scared. I remind them it's not selfish to take care of yourself, that it's not cruelty to set boundaries, that they deserve dignity no matter their age. Michael still pays. Sarah still works. The grandkids are growing. Maybe someday our relationship will improve. Or maybe not. But that doesn't define my worth or my happiness anymore. This morning, while drinking coffee watching the sunrise, I thought about the whole journey. About the woman I was a year ago. Invisible. Silent. Convinced her only value was serving others. And I looked at the woman I am now. Visible. With a voice. Convinced her value is simply in existing. I got up and went to the mirror. The same 70-year-old woman stared back. The same wrinkles. The same white hair. But the eyes were different. They no longer reflected resignation. They reflected peace, strength, purpose. They stole my years and called it care, I said to my reflection. But I took them back, quietly, with truth and courage. I smiled. A real smile, the kind that comes from the soul, because I finally understood something key. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Strength isn't always violent. Sometimes it's serene. And freedom doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it comes from within, from deciding you deserve more, and then doing what's needed to get it. If this story touched your heart, if something in it rang true for your life, or someone you know, stick with me. Because there are more stories like this. Stories of women who found their voice when everyone told them to shut up. Stories of quiet justice, of dignity reclaimed, of lives rebuilt. The next story might sound painfully familiar, or it might be exactly what you need to hear today. Because it's never too late to stop being invisible. Never too late to reclaim what's yours. And never ever too late to choose yourself.